Hello and welcome to the Hole in My Heart podcast. This is episode 208, Courageous Pastors, the West Coast.
Is it the best coast?
Yes.
Today we're going to determine it on the tournament of... No, just kidding. Guys, welcome to the Hole in My Heart podcast, where we talk about how the gospel is good news for everyone every day. We're coming at you from the lovely WCSG radio studio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I'm your host, Lori Krieg. And I have alongside me my husband and favorite licensed therapist and judge, just kidding, Matt Krieg. I want this to be a food competition now.
Food competition, yes. We're on the chopping block. It's good to be here.
Glad you're here. And we have with us our friend and the most professional radio voice among us, producer Steve.
Hi, guys.
Whose palate is impeccable.
Sure. No, since COVID, not so much.
Oh, that's true. Do you still not have your taste
No,
back?
I don't, but it's okay.
All right. You're like, please don't ask more questions.
Don't
It's
rub
just
it in.
ongoingly sad. Guys, today we are continuing our 3-part mini-series focused on equipping pastors and church leaders to take the courageous step from conceptualization of doing a sermon or series on human sexuality to actualization. What's it take to go from concept to execution? And I mentioned this last time. I'm going to mention it again. If the 2019 Barna study is true, that 3 of the top 4 things that pastors feel both pressured to speak about and compelled to speak about are related to human sexuality, how do they do it then? So today we are going to have someone from the West Coast, not to do a food cooking competition, although I don't know. I feel like everyone on the West Coast has to be good at cooking food. It is good. But my friend Tom Kang. Tom, welcome.
Wow, it's so good to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Are you a great cook? I mean, should we add that to the bio real quick?
I am a great eater, okay? I'm not a great cook, but
Amen.
I am a great eater.
Yes, same.
Yeah.
Same.
Well, to help us get to know Tom a little better, born and raised in New Jersey, Tom served as the teaching pastor at Liquid Church there. He then moved across the country with 4 women to naturally become the men's pastor at Saddleback Church
There you go.
in California.
Naturally.
Yeah, of course. Now Tom provides point leadership in downtown Los Angeles at New Story Church.
Oh, yeah.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But we want to get to know Tom a little bit better, as well as some of our listeners.
Yeah.
And so we're going to start with the question of the week from last time, which is, Tom, what is the chore that you always or maybe often do that your spouse or roommate or whoever you live with never does? Or to put it another way, what is a thing that's visible to you but invisible to everyone else?
Good question. I am the exterminator of the household.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the best purchases under $50 was I need to say this, I need to pronounce this very clearly, a salt rifle. So a plastic gun that you put salt in, and basically you shoot flies, you shoot spiders, kind of made it a game. So I'm that guy.
So
one of the best purchases we've ever made under $50. So, and I'm also a drain unclogger.
Yeah.
So the 4 women, let's just, just so that we're all clear here. I have 3 daughters and 1 wife. So that's the 4 women. Lot of hair, lot of long hair in like the drains. And so the best purchase under $10 was a drain unclogger thing that you It was like $7 on Amazon. Best thing ever, because hello, you call the plumber, that's $100 right there. So
Right.
Send that link this way for Matt, and I think Steve is also. Yeah.
Oh, it's like literally $7, and it's like the best thing ever.
Okay, well, I may just link those things in the show notes because everybody's sold on the space salt space rifle.
Right. Yes.
And the drain declogger.
Salt rifle. You got to say that so carefully.
a salt rifle, not an assault rifle.
Yes.
No, not here.
Rifle, salt, iodized salt. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciated. We have had my Australian friend, Sam Wan, staying with us over the last few days. And so I was like, hey, Sam, you're a listener. Can you answer this question? And so here's his answer to what's visible to him.
Hey, Laurie and Matt. This is Sam from Australia. Love your show. Well, I actually love chores. So I do all the chores in my place. So I do the mopping, I do the cleaning, I do the vacuuming, I do everything. And it gives me such joy on my days off.
Look at this guy.
Wow.
Where can we get like an army of Sams to come into everyone's household and do all the chores?
He does all the chores and he enjoys it.
Maybe
on
he
his
should
days
write
off.
a book, The Joy of Chores.
There you go. I know. Give it to our kids. Anyway, Matt, whose answer did you appreciate?
Yeah, I really liked what Sarah had to say on Facebook. She said she does the bathrooms. He does the garbage because she can't touch food waste. Too much ew. But then she went on to add, she also never cleans the drains. So
Yeah.
that was what called out to me.
Yeah.
So
You
she
need the
handles.
drain unclogger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
$7.
need that $7 Amazon item.
He's getting his commish.
Commission,
He's
yeah.
getting his, see my link in bio. Put Tom Kang / Tom Kang.
Coupon code.
You
Yeah.
get free Prime shipping.
Steve, what about you?
Well, I just appreciated this short message on Facebook from Raquel. Said, the dishes, in all caps.
all caps.
And we don't have a dishwasher.
Oh, girl.
I appreciate Raquel. That's like my wife.
Yeah.
She is the dish doer. I am also the drain cleaner and exterminator. Yeah, I got to
See
get that. I got to get that
Yeah.
done.
Yes. Salt. Yeah.
Assault rifles for everyone.
That's right.
Hey, assault rifles for everyone.
We just got
That's a different
flagged.
podcast.
Yeah, that's not here. I like all the male camaraderie. I'm just feeling it. Okay. I also just need to put a little apology because I feel like I did spark several fights on our Facebook podcast page. Not super intense, but I'm like, I think I have a couple regrets for this question of the week. So sorry, guys. Anyway, let's pivot to the reason we do this is, get to know each other. That's good. But also to talk about the gospel. Which I just want to go on a tangent now about how the gospel includes joking things. But anyway, if the gospel is we are more sinful and flawed in ourselves than we ever dared believe, and yet at the very same time we are more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ than we ever dared hope, how was that gospel first good news for you, Tom, and how is it still?
Oh, great question. Gosh, that's a Tim Keller quote, right?
It's in quotes in the script, but yeah.
I love it. No, I love it. Well, I'm someone that was like born in church, right? Like I've been going to church in my mother's womb kind of a thing. Like we were the family that had like a family service on Sunday morning in the house.
Oh.
Like where my dad would preach. He was like an elder, kind of whatever. And then we would go to church, right? So like, I hated church. Like it's like we do church too much,
Yeah.
like Wednesday, like midweek services, Saturday morning prayer meetings, like all the the whole thing. And so like I heard the gospel at an early age, certainly, grammar school, elementary, junior high, high school. But I don't think it really became good news for me until I got out of that environment and I was in college. Right. And, you start making decisions of your own and you start doing things your own way, sort of a thing. And it was really like my sophomore year where I always kind of knew Jesus gave his life for me, but it became really evident how like I need to give my life to Christ. I need to put my faith in him. I need to follow him. And like the gospel is something I need every day, right? Like how is the gospel good news to me still today? Like, gosh, I'm almost 50 years old and I'm just now, I feel like starting to realize maybe in the last 5 years or so that I get to live and work and serve and minister from God's love and not for it. Right. And so like most of my life, I've been trying to live for God's love, trying to live for his acceptance, trying to live for his approval. And the gospel is like, no, bro, like you already have those things and you get to live from them. And so, that's how it is for me.
Yeah. So with that in mind, like, how did you know that you needed, and it was time maybe to give a sermon or a series on the LGBTQ conversation?
Oh gosh. I mean, here's the reality, right? Like everyone was having this conversation anyways,
Right.
in the lunchrooms, in the locker rooms, in the car rides to school. This conversation was happening everywhere with everyone all the time, except church. So it's kind of like, oh, okay. What's that about? What's going on there? And, like I think what is it? Andy Stanley, who talks about how like the church should be like the safest place for any conversation. I remember when I first heard that like a few years ago, I was just like, that is so true, but that's so not going on.
Right.
At least in any church I've been a part of,
Right.
or most churches I've been a part of. And so, it's just kind of realizing those things and kind of dealing with those tensions, that it was just like, okay, well, enough's enough. Let's have this conversation. And oh, by the way, it helps when you have, when you're raising 3 teenage girls
Yeah.
who've got these questions anyway, who are having these conversations anyway. And it's like, all right, it's probably time that they heard from scripture. They probably have friends. They probably know people that have never heard kind of a biblical perspective of things. So
What was the kind of the cultural context surrounding this conversation for you? Obviously, San Francisco being maybe known as a more liberal city, but then also having this kind of window with your 3 daughters who are teenagers, kind of even to how people are talking about it in kind of the younger generations and everything. Like what was the surrounding context you were working through as you prepared?
Yeah. Well, first we're in Los Angeles, downtown LA, but very similar to San Francisco, still the wild, wild west, right? And it is a more kind of liberal environment, so to speak. But I would say, like more than like a West Coast thing or like an LA vibe, I would say the kind of environment surrounding like our church was that our church is a really good mix of both over and under churched people, right? So like we have people that, like me, have been born and raised in the church, been going to church their whole lives, been going to this church their whole lives. But we also have like a good portion. And when I say good portion, I want to say like close to 50%. Like certainly greater than 25%, somewhere hovering somewhere between 25-50% of our church are people that have just started coming to church within the last, like, I want to say like 2-3 years. So like really under church. So I think that would be more than any kind of regional vibe, that would be the kind of cultural vibe, at least, for New Story Church, is this mix of underchurched and overchurched.
How did that factor into your merging? So you're like, I feel this pressure. Everybody's talking about it. And then our specific outside of the church makeup and inside of it is unchurched, dechurched, etc. How did those two merge? How did that affect your prep?
Yeah. It forces you to be a better preacher, right?
Okay.
Like it forces you, it really forces you, not saying that I am a better preacher, but
Right.
It forces you to be a better one, because you can't, to be completely honest, you can't be sloppy. Like you're not going to be able to just riff off these kind of biblical platitudes and have that jive with people that are totally unchurched. Right. And you're not going to be able to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like placate to a unchurched, vocabulary and culture and try to like woo them in and have that jive with the overchurch. Right. So like you're going to have to find this third way, this kind of radical third way, right? The way of Christ, so to speak, that's going to be able to, first of all, realize that you're going to offend somebody. Like, not everyone is going to walk away from what you have to say happy-go-lucky and everybody, kumbaya, my lord, kind of a thing.
Right.
Like, everyone's going to get offended in some way.
If you're doing it right.
I think so, right? I think so. And here's the thing, though. I think you as the speaker and the communicator need to come to terms with that, right? Like, hey, you're going to offend everyone. Everyone's going to walk away somehow offended. You're not going to be conservative enough. You're not going to be liberal enough. You're not going to be biblical enough. You're not going to be contextual enough. Like, whatever, right? Like, somebody's going to have a great. So you need to come to terms with that. And like, for me, when I'm in those spots, I just call it out. So like, in the first, like, I think it was our series, The Gospel and Sexuality, I think that series was 5 weeks. Was it 4 or 5 weeks? It might have been even 6. No, it was 5. It was 5 weeks. And the first message, so I preached the first message, and it was really important for me to set that tone and sort of level set expectations. All right. And just kind of bare my heart and be like, hey, guys, first of all, this is a series that's been long coming. I apologize for that. Here's why. I'm dealing with my own stuff, my own insecurities, my own people pleasingness, et cetera, et cetera. I love you guys. I don't want to lose you guys, but I know that some of you are going to be offended, et cetera, et cetera. And just call all those things out. And I feel like the quicker you come to terms personally, and number 2, the quicker you can call that out, kind of expectationally for everyone else, for all the listeners, then I think you're setting yourself up for some measure of success, for some measure at least of understanding.
I really appreciate that. Just setting the stage right from the get-go, vulnerably and with humility. Was there any kind of, like, even before the sermons started, like, what did it look like preparing, I don't know, like your church leadership, your staff? Like, what did that look like?
Oh my gosh. So you're going to have to roll up your sleeves if you do a series like this. Let me just tell you right off the bat. Like here's a great live example. So like we just started a series last week on Galatians, right? A biblical study of freedom, right? And because like the whole book, right, 6 chapters, it's all about freedom in Christ, freedom from the law, freedom from this, that, and the other. And it's an expository series. And, verse by verse, we start with Galatians chapter 1, verse 1, and we go all the way to the last verse in chapter 6. And, every year we try to do a couple of these, right? What is the preparation like for that in terms of prepping my leaders, in terms of like letting zero? Like, hey guys, next week we're doing a series on Galatians. Like there's no preparatory work. We don't have to let the small group leaders know. I don't have to let my elders know. It's not a big deal to the staff. It's just like, okay, great, Galatians. I've been wanting, I got some questions about that book. It's like everyone's on the same page. No one has a problem with it. You do something like this, you better roll up your sleeves, okay? You better personally first, like just pray through it. And then when you can't contain it anymore and you have to preach this, then you just start cascading that information. Tell your lead team, your inner circle, so to speak, first, the staff, let your elders on board, let them know, hey guys, we need to really pray about this. This is something that God's been burdening on my heart, et cetera, et cetera. You start having conversations like this, and all of a sudden you've got an elder saying to you, oh my gosh, thank you. Like I've been wanting to know, like, I have a son, I have a daughter who's been asking me these questions. I don't know how to have these conversations. Like, thank God we're doing something like this. Or, I have a friend, or I have a coworker, I have a neighbor who's struggling with this, that, or the other. And so I think that just begins to, open the conversation, right? Broaden the scope a little bit. And then, on a practical level, you're talking about, for instance, for every single series we have before, like we do the series to prepare, like our creative team, our production team, our worship band, to get the small group leaders involved, to get, kind of buy-in and prayer support from the elders, I always come up with these creative briefs. It's this one-page document that basically says, okay, what is the big win of this next series that's coming up? What are the themes? How is it broken down? Which weeks are we covering? Who's speaking on which weeks? What passages? Here's some resources, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a one-page kind of like, everything's, kind of put on that one page, a one-stop shop kind of a thing. Here are the songs that are probably going to be played, et cetera, et cetera. Well, don't you know it, for this particular series, and usually I'll pass out that creative brief, honestly, typically it used to be like 6 months in advance, but to be honest, I think COVID kind of messed things up. And so they were coming like a couple of weeks before the series. So I kind of got a little off track there. But for this particular series, it was like months in advance. It was like I want to say about 3 months in advance. I want to say about 4 months. It was about 4 months in advance. And we also made a very strategic, deliberate decision to launch this series the week after Easter, basically, because we wanted as many eyes on it as possible. And, what's the most attended Sunday of the year? Well, Easter. Everyone knows that. You can be a non-Christian and you'll go to church on Easter, right? CEOs, Christmas, Easter only, right? So we've got a lot of those in LA, people that only go to church on Christmas and Easter. The CEOs come in Christmas, Easter only. So we knew that Easter was going to be a big draw in and of itself. And that's where we promoted the series and said, hey, we're going to do this. So all that to say, that creative brief went out months before. And you're talking about, from that, in that creative brief, we've got all sorts of resources, books, videos, podcasts that address this series and said, hey, as questions come up, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it as staff. Let's talk about it as the session. Let's talk about it within our people. And so, I think that was a very deliberate approach of ours.
So you're talking about roll up your sleeves, get ready for some work. Prepare your staff, roll it out in kind of this cascading increments with your core circles and everything, and just be prepared for pushback. When you look at your own kind of personal preparation, like your mental preparation, even that prayer until it's kind of bursting out of you and you can't not preach anymore, like what was that like for you personally?
What was the preparation like for me personally? Honestly, I think for me, the preparation was happening like 5-10 years previous, right? Because like I have friends that are gay. Like I know good and godly Christians, believers in the LGBTQ community, right? And so like I'm dialoguing with them. I have a friendship, a relationship with them. And so it's like, the preparation internally for me, personally for me, had been, the preparation was called life, right? Just life, just like being a Christian. Like, I don't know how else to explain. So like that was happening in the background for 5-10 years. It's not like I took on this, this spiritual discipline of, okay, now I'm going to study like the 12 clobber passages, in scripture, that speak against homosexuals. Like that really wasn't it. I mean, there was some of that, I guess, like in the span of like the 5-10 years, but most of the preparation and hard work that you're asking about, I mean, that was happening organically in just my walk and my conversations and my relationships with people. And it got to the point where it's just like, why am I not speaking about this from the pulpit? That's all fear. That's all fear. Like the only reason why I'm not is fear. It's fear of man. It's fear of losing people. It's fear of people not liking me. It's fear of people not liking my church, right? That's a whole nother podcast episode, right? Like, so it's like all this fear stuff And it's just like, all right, enough. Like we're going this way, right? And this is just what we got to do. So I don't know. That might be like the worst answer to what was the personal preparation, or it might be the best, but it's the realest answer I have.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I really appreciate that answer because I feel like it really highlights, like, I mean, the name of the series is Courageous Pastors. There's a lot of people who might feel courageous that have no relationship, and they might go out and speak kind of whatever answers they have, but in a way that is not gracious, that is not actually even biblical. And so, like, to hear that this was a conversation, this was a topic that touched your life in a very real way, I think is really just important for people to hear.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, and I appreciate that, and that's so true because, and by the way, let's just also call this out. It's not like I'm such a great pastor and I realize this and therefore I implement it. Like, I'm learning, I'm tripping up and falling as we go. Like, I've been that guy that pounded the pulpit over whatever topic and you got to do this and the Bible says this and thus saith the Lord. Like, I've been that guy for sure, right? But I've also been a pastor now for, full-time pastor now for, over 22 years, 23 years. Wow. And so I've learned a few things over that course of time. And that's why when it came to this particular series, one of the things that I was like adamant about was, hey, unlike any other series, and again, this is stuff that I called out on week 1 of the series, because I said I started week 1, but here's the thing that we did is I said, hey, this series is going to be a little different for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons this is going to be a different series is in every other series that we've done in the past, it's been a monologue. This is going to be a dialogue. Like, this series is going to kind of emulate and resemble like what I think is the best model for us to go further, to draw deeper to Christ and connect better with one another's. And that's going to be dialogue. And by the way, I don't have the market. I don't have the corner on truth, right? Like, your pastor has a lot to learn here. And I have been learning a lot from my brothers and sisters. So I'm actually going to invite some of them into this conversation because, like, let's just be like totally real here. How much are you going to learn from me? I'm like male, cisgender, heterosexual, who's never faced any of these LGBTQ plus issues.
Right.
So, like, how about we get some folks that have like really struggled with some of these issues, who love Jesus with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, who believe the Bible, and like, let's hear from them. Perhaps we have something to learn from them.
Right.
And so, like, the following 4 weeks, I invited a guest speaker into the conversation. And by the way, after each of the services, so we have a 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock service. So after the services for the day, we would have a Q&A with each speaker, again, representing this dialogue model rather than monologue, which is what everyone is used to. Some pastor being up there for 30, 40 minutes a week, as just by himself. And, so
I love it.
That's something that we implemented. Yeah.
So just to restate, if someone had just jumped in as a listener, first time listener and caller, and they're hearing some of the language, I just need to clarify for first timers. So when Tom is saying, these are my LGBTQ friends and they're following Jesus, what he means by that is this: God has allowed these friends to experience some sort of wrestling with their gender, some sort of gender dysphoria or experience of dissonance between their biological sex and their perceived sense of male, female, or something in there. Yes. Or God has allowed these friends to experience attractions toward the same sex so that, and this is going to be the drum I'm going to keep beating, is so that they can experience more intimacy with the Father in these places of weakness, which is a gift to us and gives glory to God. And so that we can be, those of us who are, God has allowed this in us, so that we can be an effective evangelistic witness for such a time as this. So Tom is not saying, I don't have the corner market on truth, whatever. All truth is whatever, blah, blah.
Right.
No. He holds to a traditional view of marriage. He believes biological or alignment with your biological sex. However, God has allowed this in some of us so that he can get the glory through our weakness.
Yep. Amen. Preach it. Yeah.
Just have to say.
Thank you. That's great clarification. Yes.
Well,
yes.
Amen
and hallelujah.
I want people to hear what you're saying, Tom. So I want to get the little things that are niggling in their ears out of the way. So just to clarify too, because this was powerful for me when I interviewed you. I interviewed Tom for a paper I'm writing for the Center for Faith, Sexuality, and Gender. So again, if you're a first-time listener, please go to centerforfaith.com and you are going to find some great information as a pastor, as a layperson. But just for clarity's sake, you told me in that interview that you it was like about, well, how long was it between I need to do this sermon and then doing the sermon series?
I mean, no less than 5 years. No less than 5. I mean, because again, this has been a topic of conversation for like a long time, right? Gosh, but again, it was the fear factor that ran up against my kids getting older and asking more of those questions and being in environments where those conversations were happening already, coupled with, I just felt like with every year, more gas was being poured on this topic from the culture around us.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, when is enough enough? Like, when are we going to actually roll up our sleeves, get over ourselves, and address this topic that everyone is talking about, except the church? So, at least 5 years, I want to say. At least.
So, all right, fast forward. You do the series, you do the 5 weeks. Like, how would you say, how did it go? Did you get, like, any negative feedback, any pushback, what did it cost you personally?
Yeah.
Like, is there anything you in hindsight or retrospect to be like, maybe I would do this differently? Like, how do you feel it went?
Yeah. So I'll say this right away because it just needs to be said. I think about a total of 6 to 8 people walked out. Like during the middle of the
real life.
So it's during the 5 weeks, right? During the 5 services, I think a total of 8 people walked. So 5 weeks, that's 10 services. So in 10 services, a total of 8 people walked out. So there's that. That never feels good.
Doesn't feel good. Nope. I've had that. It's not fun. Nope.
It's like, oh, well, maybe they had to go to the restroom. No, dude, they left the church. They left the building, bro. Get over it. Right. So like that did happen. So I just want to call that out. But you know what? Honestly, honestly, I want to say that was the worst.
Huh.
Like I think I was so prepared for the onslaught of emails, right? Because I'll get those emails even just preaching Galatians. You know what I mean? So like John 3:16, I'll still get those. So like I think I was like so like, got my armor on and got like all my, and like I think I was so prepared for that. That like, I think maybe over the course of 5 weeks, like maybe like a small handful of disparaging emails came in, like, I can't believe, blah, blah, blah. But I have to say, Steve, like the overwhelming majority, like greater than 95% from both the overchurched and the unchurched was just, I think, just overwhelming, like, thanks.
Huh.
Right? Wow. Like, thank you so much. Either I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel loved, I feel embraced, or my gosh, thank you. So I'm actually having a real conversation with my college kid for the first time.
Wow.
Pastor Tom, me and a lot of parents with older kids and some of them younger, I've never been able to talk with my child about the Bible, about anything. But when it comes to this topic, they came to me, or I felt better prepared. And so like that was a huge praise. That was a huge Thanksgiving from a lot of parents. And there were other parents who had children, as you might imagine. I mean, we're a fairly big sized church. We have a number of folks from all over the place, like I've mentioned, and yeah, we had a number. I think of right now a number of parents that came up to me and said, you know, their child they know struggles with gender dysphoria. They struggle. Or their all their friends are LGBTQ, and they're just wondering, like, like what's going on? How do I handle that sort of thing? And this was a tremendous salve for them, I think. And what it does is it's not a one-hit wonder, right? Like it doesn't go away after the series. It's like, no, what it did is it opened up more dialogue, more conversations, deeper relationship. And so, a year later or a year plus later, and we're in Galatians, and they have no problems. Now we know, right? Now it's all we've had that conversation. It's been put on the table, and so now we can pick it up anytime, and we can talk about progress or regress, right? Because that happens too in life. And so, gosh, it has been a tremendously positive blessing. Wow. You asked the second part, though, that I think is really important. What did it cost me? I just want to be completely real here. It cost me a lot more than I thought.
Okay.
Because I think maybe like a lot of pastors, I'm like this closet like adrenaline junkie, right? So during COVID, it's like I want to like, so our church, we had to we're in downtown Los Angeles, right? So like we are one of the examples of the longest periods of closing your doors, right? Like I used to live in Dallas. I have a lot of friends in Dallas. Like I don't think COVID even existed in Dallas. I don't know. It's just like, I love you, friends. But anyway, so there's that extreme, and we were the other extreme, right? And like we just weren't allowed, in many cases, to open our doors. So, anyways, be that as it may, 18 months we didn't open our doors, but in the beginning of COVID, I want to say, like, this was exciting. This is weird. There's probably something broken in. There's a lot broken in me, but like, this is probably one example. Like, I loved it. Like, I was excited. I was, this is new. This is different. I didn't learn this in seminary. Oh my gosh, this is the most disruptive thing since World War II. It's even more. Oh, look at us. We have been called for such a time as yes, Lord. Like, okay. It's like by the 18th month. Or even like, let's talk about the 20th month when we're now starting to regather and open things up, and people are skittish about going to church. And now we're doing this hybrid thing. It's like once we were all, live 100%, and then we were all online 100%. And now we're doing this something in between here. Like, what's that? And all that to say, like that experience of COVID, like took a toll on me, right?
Right.
This experience with Gospel and Sexuality series, this 5-week series, and all the build up for it, and it was exciting and it was new, and it's like, okay, let's be courageous, let's be strong, we're gonna take new ground. Like all that's really exciting, man. And then you add the positive stuff that I just talked about after that, like that's still exciting. Like you're riding on those, good waves for quite a bit. But dude, I'm just coming off of my 3-month sabbatical. So like, if that says anything, I'm probably 2 months off of my 3-month sabbatical. It's the first time in my adult life where I've ever taken more than a week off. Like literally, like my honeymoon was 7 days. My move from New Jersey to California was 7 days. Like I've never in my adult life taken more than 7 days off. Except for this sabbatical, where the church, actually, it was to the credit of my elders, really, and my lead team. at one point in early 2023, this year, I think we all kind of were all waving a flag, like nothing bad had happened, right? So like, just want to dispel that there's nothing immoral, nothing like, but it's just like, hey, I think I'm running on fumes here. I need a break. I need to tap out for a second,
Yeah.
And I say all that to say, what was the cost to me? I think it was more than I realized in the moment, in the lead up to it, and the immediate weeks after. I think later on, and it's not just that series, but it was, let's also throw in, we did a Vote for Jesus series during election month. We did a racial reconciliation series called Change during the height of George Floyd. When people were literally in the streets of LA, like, looting and rioting and whatnot, protesting. And, the whole COVID thing. So like, I think it was a lot of those things kind of added up later on. But yeah, this was a significant portion for sure. And just, as a pastor, right? Like bearing the burdens, like when you hear these stories, gosh, like I'm tearing up. When you hear these stories, especially from parents, it just really tore me up, because like I don't have this struggle with my girls. Or maybe like they don't have this struggle, but like we've got our own set of struggles. You know what I mean? I've got my own stuff, and it's hard. And when you're in a place of fear and you feel like you can't even, my struggles maybe are more acceptable to the church, like workaholism. It's more acceptable, or fear of others, people pleasing. That's like a more acceptable a sin, if you want to call it, temptation, if you want to call it, brokenness. And I don't know, that's just not fair, right? And so it really tore me up to see parents, to see students, to see young adults carrying these burdens and struggles for the way that they were for so long. And that just wears you down, after a while.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine a pastor who is listening to this, who's hearing some of the importance, but they're just downright afraid, what would you say to them about the importance of this conversation, why they need to have it from the pulpit, and then if possible, offer some type of encouragement?
Yeah, Matt, I would say to that person first, that pastor, we're talking specifically about a pastor, right? I don't know if this makes sense, but I would first say to that pastor, you need to find someone that struggles with this. Like if you don't struggle with it yourself, if you've not gone through the walk yourself, like you need to find someone that struggles with this first before you say anything from the pulpit, and just buy them lunch, take them out to coffee, hear some of their struggles, because like propositionally, theologically, cerebrally, like you probably know where you want to go with this thing. But the reason why you probably haven't gone there is like there's a heart disconnect. And whether you realize it or not, it's there. And the thing that's going to help you most efficiently and quickly to get that connection between the head and heart is sitting across the table from someone, looking them in the eyes and hearing their story. This kind of goes back to another question that was asked previously about like what was the prep work that I did. Here's something that I would totally suggest for all pastors. Not only take yourself out of the framework of monologue and switch to dialogue, at least for this one, and make yourself available for some Q&As, et cetera, but here's what you need to do. You know that person I was talking about, like find that person in your congregation that does struggle with this, because they're there. That person is there, okay? That's one thing that we did. I was just like, I am not going to do this series, number one, just like me preaching monologue. We're going to invite guest speakers, but who in our congregation has carried their cross through this, right? So we have a number of people that have carried their cross through this. Can I talk to that person? And would that person be willing to share? So there's this guy. He's not going to mind me calling him out. Aaron Ashby. Aaron Ashby is this beautiful, beautiful soul. Great guy. He volunteers. He leads small groups. African-American, married, recently married. They met at a New Story small group, whole love story, all that stuff. But he is same-sex. He has struggled with same-sex attraction. Mm-hmm. And that is something that he has had to wrestle for that for so much of his life. Mm. And hearing his story and how he had to submit that to the cross, die to himself, carry his cross daily, and how that led to the marriage to his wife. And just that whole journey, I was like, bro, like, thank you for sharing that with me. Would you be willing to actually share that with the congregation? And you talk about courageous. I'm not courageous. He's courageous. He's courageous. Because you know what? At that time, very few people in our church knew.
Wow.
Aaron? Like literally, like when he shared his testimony, people were like, what? I had no idea. Mm-hmm. Like, I know Hollywood's down the street. Are you guys making this up? What's going on here? You know what I mean? And that, dude, do you think anyone remembered anything I said in that message? No, of course not. Right? They remembered Aaron Ashby's testimony.
Yeah.
From a guy who literally had to carry his cross. So, like, you need to find that person. So that's what I would say to that pastor. You need to find those people, have those conversations, because otherwise you don't have those conversations and you just go from what's here. It's going to just come across so wooden. It's just like, that's not going to advance anyone closer to Christ. That's not going to advance the conversation. That's not going to deepen any relationships.
Goodness. Tom, thank you so much. Can I link to your sermon series in the show notes? Okay. Yeah. So if anyone's watching and wants to watch it.
Yeah, that was another thing. I'm like remembering all this stuff right now. Like, what do we do in terms of preparation and even preparing our people? Once that we created a special page for that series, like during the series, with all the resources, so, like all these books and videos, and you mentioned the Center for Faith, Sexuality, and Gender. Like that was one of the resources that we put there. Greg Coles was one of our speakers. Preston Sprinkles, all like his books and stuff like that. So like all that stuff was there, and that was before the series, during the series, and it remains there. So I'll send you that link.
Perfect.
That shoots you directly to that page for sure.
Well, awesome. Well, I will link that for our listeners. And Tom, thank you again for joining us today. This was so life-giving and informative.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It was truly a pleasure and privilege.
Okay. Well, I feel more sanctified based on that conversation and equipped. Guys, what stood out to you?
I think, aside from assault rifles, the thing that just stood out for me was the last kind of thing that he had said, just to find that person, not as the token gay person that you can use to conceptualize your sermon, but in order to actually create that connection of care and to connect the heart with the concept of, the theology and all that behind the sermon. So
that's it. Yeah. Steve?
So much. I really appreciated the quote he had toward the beginning about how the church ought to be the safest place to have these difficult conversations, and to just hear somebody who's trying to move in that direction was encouraging, and the dialogue versus, a monologue. I just really appreciated that.
I'm loving that you guys are hearing these conversations I've had in different forms, but I'm sure you can notice the difference between the pastor from the South to the pastor on the West Coast. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us today and learning along with us these different ways to contextualize this same good gospel message that is through the human sexuality pathway. So thanks for joining us today, but we do have a question of the week before we close up. We can fight about this one too, but hopefully a little less intensely because it's not chores. What is the best pen and color of pen? We'll answer that. We'll give you the right answer next time after you guys give us your, no, just kidding. But I'm excited to hear from you guys. But that's it. If you guys would take a minute to rate and review, that helps others find us. Thank you so much to our courageous pastor, Tom Kang. Thank you to the Zach of all trades and his intern, Delaney. And for all of us here at the Hole in My Heart podcast, we'll see you next time.